They say weddings bring out the best in people. But sometimes, they bring out the truth. The truth about who you are to the ones you call family. And who's been waiting, quietly, to finally take something back. My name is Jessica. I'm 34 years old. And on the morning of my wedding, while my dress waited quietly on its hanger, my sister called my fiancé and asked if she could walk down the aisle before me, in a gown, in front of our guests, because she was older. And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I didn't argue, smiled, because I realized, maybe the best kind of revenge is delivered in white silk and silence. The sun filtered through my bedroom window that morning, casting soft golden light across the lace of my gown. It was everything I'd ever imagined. Fitted bodice, sheer sleeves, a train that moved like a whisper. I ran my hand over the fabric slowly, taking it in. Today was supposed to be the day I walked into a new life. But instead I stood still, bracing for what I already knew was coming. I didn't hear the knock. I just saw the door open a crack. And then Alex, my fiancé, his face calm. "Come. Jess," he said gently. "We need to talk." He sat down beside me, exhaled slowly like it hurt to speak. Then he said it, just like that. "Your sister called me last night." I didn't flinch. I didn't ask. 'Cause I already knew. "She wants to walk down the aisle before you," he continued. "In a dress. Not white but close. Pale champagne." Closed my eyes. Course she did. Emily had always had a gift for turning my milestones into her moments. From my high school graduation to my first promotion. Somehow, she always found a way to make it hers too. And now my wedding. Alex reached for my hand, warm and steady. "I told her I'd think about it," he said. I opened my eyes, startled. "You what?" But there was a look in his eyes, one I'd only seen a few times before. Not fear. Not hesitation. Strategy. He leaned in close, his voice low and sure. "If we say no, they'll just find another way. But if we let them think they've won, we hold the power. We control the board." And suddenly, understood. We weren't being pushed out anymore. We were playing the long game. And Emily, she had no idea what was coming. There's something sacred about the early morning light on your wedding day. It softens everything. The air feels calmer, the world quieter, and for a brief moment, it feels like peace has finally found you. I remember standing in my bedroom, watching that light pour through the window, casting gold across my dress. Hung there like a promise. Fitted lace sleeves, a soft ivory train. The dress I had dreamed about since I was 12. The one I bought 2 towns away so no one, especially my sister, could interfere. This was supposed to be my day. The first day in a long time that wasn't shared, compared or second-guessed. Just mine. But even before the sun was fully up, I could feel it. That quiet tightening in my chest. That voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Something's coming." And then came the knock. Alex, my fiancé, opened the door slowly. He wasn't supposed to see me that morning. We had planned everything by the book. But he stood there, face unreadable, hands tucked in his pockets, which was strange for him, because Alex wears his feelings openly. Joy, frustration, laughter, it's all right there. So when he said, "Jessica, your sister called me last night," already knew. Emily, my older sister, the one who had somehow managed to stand at the center of every room I entered since the day I was born. "She wants to walk down the aisle before you," he continued. "She says because she's older. And because she's not married yet. She wanted to wear a gown. Not white but a soft champagne. She wanted to go first. My wedding. And my parents, they agreed. They told Alex it was a small favor." I didn't cry. Not like I used to. I just nodded slowly. Because deep down none of it surprised me. You see, this wasn't the first time Emily had taken something that wasn't hers. Not the first time she'd turned my milestones into her moments. My graduation speech. She interrupted it to announce her new job. My engagement dinner. She arrived in a white dress and sat at the center of the table. And now my wedding. And what did my parents say? She didn't mean any harm. Just be the bigger person. You don't want to ruin the mood. Here's the truth no one tells you. When someone is always given permission to take, they forget how to ask. But that day, something in me finally shifted. Because Alex didn't just deliver the news. He also delivered the plan. He smiled softly and said, "We're not going to fight them. We're going to let them think they've won." And in that moment I realized something. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a quiet bride, smiling softly, while setting the stage for her own liberation. Sometimes you don't need to scream to take your power back. Sometimes the calmest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. But to understand how I got here, how I ended up plotting my sister's downfall on the morning of my own wedding, you need to know what it was like to grow up in her shadow. Let me take you back. Growing up with Emily as my older sister was like standing next to the sun. She was bright, magnetic, impossible to ignore. And me, well, I was the shade. From the outside, it probably looked like a regular sibling dynamic. But anyone who's lived it, really lived it, knows it's something deeper. There's even a name for it: golden child syndrome. It's what happens when one child becomes the family's prized possession. The one who can do no wrong. The one whose success is celebrated, whose mistakes are excused, whose voice is always the loudest in the room. And then there's the other child. The one who gets told, "Why can't you be more like your sister? Let her have this, it means more to her. Don't make a scene." That was me. When I got into my first choice college, my parents barely looked up from their phones. But when Emily dropped out of her third major and decided to pursue her truth through interior design, they threw her a party. When I won my first writing competition, my mom forgot to show up. But when Emily posted a new photo on Instagram, my dad sent it to the family group chat with the caption, "Our superstar." I didn't resent her at first. I thought maybe if I tried harder I could earn what she had. So I became the quiet achiever. The one who never caused trouble. The one who said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. The one who clapped the loudest, even when no one clapped for me. But that kind of silence builds something dangerous. Builds a habit of shrinking. And eventually, you forget how much space you're actually allowed to take up. I remember once, at my 16th birthday dinner, I made a wish out loud. "I hope this year I get to find my voice." And without skipping a beat, Emily laughed and said, "Oh please, you're the quiet one. That's your thing." Everyone chuckled. And I smiled, pretending it didn't sting. But it did. Because when people tell you who you are long enough, you start to believe them. You are allowed to be more than what your family expects of you. You are allowed to take up space. And no one gets to define your worth by how convenient you are to their comfort. So when Emily decided my wedding should also be her moment, I didn't react the way I used to. Because this time I had something she didn't expect. Partner. And a plan. Let me tell you what happened next. One of the quietest blessings in my life came wrapped in flannel and calm eyes. His name is Alex. We met at a bookstore on a rainy Tuesday, both reaching for the same coffee-stained paperback. I liked him instantly. Not because he said much, but because of how much he noticed. He's the kind of man who pays attention. To the pauses between sentences. To the way your hands tremble when you're pretending you're fine. So when I told him about my family, about Emily, he didn't offer advice. He listened. And over the years, when those little heartbreaks would happen, the ones you can't really explain to anyone else, Alex would just sit beside me on the couch, hand on my knee, and say, "You don't need to be louder. You just need someone who sees you." So when he said, "We're not going to fight them, we're going to use it," I didn't feel manipulated. I felt protected. He explained it slowly, like laying out chess pieces. If we push back now, they'll double down. They'll guilt you, make it your fault. But if we let them think they've won, we can shape how this plays out. We give them just enough rope, then take the lead. It wasn't vindictive. It was smart, strategic, and more than that, it was the first time someone had stood with me, not just behind me. A few years earlier, our landlord had tried to evict us illegally to raise the rent. I was ready to cry and pack up. Alex filed a complaint, gathered evidence, called the city, and didn't raise his voice once. He just smiled and said, "Never show your hand until they think they've won." That was Alex. Not flashy, not loud, just focused, protective, precise. Love isn't always roses and big gestures. Sometimes it's quiet planning and standing beside you when the ground shakes. Sometimes the strongest partnerships are the ones that protect your peace and sharpen your voice. So we started laying the groundwork. Dinner with my parents. Compromises that weren't compromises at all. And little by little, we gave them just enough power to feel in control, while we took the reins behind the scenes. When you grow up in a family where love is measured in compliance, you learn to sit through a lot of dinners with a smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes. That night, when we invited my parents and Emily over, felt no different. The table was set, the air was tight, and I could already feel my old instincts creeping in. Fold your hands, say yes, stay small. But this time, I didn't. This time I had Alex beside me. He was calm like always, but his eyes didn't leave the room for a second. He knew what we were walking into, and more importantly, what we were walking them into. Emily arrived first, glowing like she'd won a silent war. She waltzed in with photos on her phone, ideas for her champagne moment. She was practically buzzing with self-importance. My parents followed, smiling in that tight, proud way they always did when she spoke. We let them talk. We listened, nodded, smiled. And then, just as the room felt settled, we started planting seeds. Alex leaned forward and said, "If we're adjusting the ceremony for Emily, we'll need to shift some things. Venue size, extra seating, adjusted dress coordination. That means extra cost." My mother waved it off. "We'll help. Course we will. We want this to be special, for both of you." Then I added softly, "If Emily is walking before me, she can't also be part of the bridal party." "Right," smiled. "We don't want too much focus on one person." Emily blinked. That hadn't occurred to her. But with my parents beaming and money already committed, she couldn't afford to push back. "Oh," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I guess that makes sense." Just like that, she was out of the bridal party. No drama, no yelling, just quiet planning and one strategic sentence. It reminded me of a time when I was 13 and Emily wanted to borrow my art project the night before it was due. My parents said, "Just let her. She's struggling." I handed it over. She got an A. I got grounded for complaining too much. Back then I let it happen. But not this time. You can't always fight a system by yelling at it. Sometimes the most effective change happens when you learn to speak its language and use it better than they do. That dinner was just the beginning, because after that night, Emily believed she'd won, and our parents, they believed we had folded. But what they didn't know was, we were already moving the next pieces into place. And the next move would be the quietest sabotage of all. Some battles are fought with noise, others with silence, smiles, and signatures. After that dinner, Emily was practically glowing. She had no idea that every yes we gave her was layered with quiet intent. She believed she was being celebrated. She didn't realize she was being steered. Alex and I started making the changes behind the scenes. Nothing loud, nothing traceable. Just adjustments. The first move was the dress. Emily insisted on shopping together. Of course I said yes. We smiled at mirrors, twirled in gowns, laughed over mocktails. She chose a mermaid-cut champagne-colored dress she adored. But what she didn't know was that the boutique never received her final confirmation. Because under Alex's gentle guidance, every agreement was verbal, never in writing. So when she'd call to complain a week before the wedding, they'd apologize, but have no record of her order. My dress, of course, had been ordered months in advance, at a different boutique under a different name. Next was the guest list. My mother begged to handle the invitations, to make things easier, and we let her. But before she could send anything out, Alex requested a draft, just to check addresses. Then quietly we printed and mailed our own set. My closest friends received their invites. Many of Emily's did not. Some were never addressed. Others were sent to the wrong zip codes. A few were simply delayed by the mail. By the time anyone noticed, the RSVP window had closed. It felt oddly similar to something I witnessed at my old job. A woman who had been passed over for promotion quietly trained a junior employee for months, only to later step aside and watch that same junior get the job she was promised. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew she had made herself invisible. That was me for years. But now I was learning the power of moving without noise. Not to erase myself, but to protect what mattered most. Sometimes the most effective boundaries are the ones no one sees coming. You don't always have to push back to win. You just have to stop giving away the pieces of yourself that were never theirs to begin with. And yet, as the pieces moved into place, I started to wonder, how far would Emily go? Was walking the aisle before me enough? Or was she planning something more? That's when we set our final trap. A dinner, question, and a promise she never meant to keep. Before we continue, if this story has stirred something in you, if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or quietly erased in your own family, take a moment and leave a comment below. What did this part of the story make you feel? Just one word is enough, because sometimes naming the feeling is the first step toward healing. Now let's keep going. The morning of my wedding arrived with a strange, eerie calm. There were no butterflies, no last-minute panic, just quiet. The kind of quiet you get when every move has already been made, every step measured, and all you have to do is wait. I sat in my bridal suite, sipping my coffee while my hair was being curled, watching the city wake up through the window. At 9:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was my mother. The message read, "Linda, we have a huge problem. Emma's dress is missing. The boutique says it was never ordered." I remember staring at the screen for a moment. Not shocked, not angry, just peaceful. This was the moment we had planned for. I took a long sip of coffee before replying. "Oh no, that's awful. What happened?" Minutes later, another message. "She says she confirmed it. They're saying she didn't. Can you call them, please?" I set the phone down. Because today I wasn't the fixer. I wasn't the peacekeeper. I was the bride. And Emily. She was about to understand that not every spotlight is hers for the taking. Meanwhile, Alex received a text from his brother. "Bro, Emily's friends are standing outside the venue. Angry, confused. They never got their invites." He smiled. I didn't have to say anything. Everything was unfolding exactly as we planned. At 12:15 p.m. my father called. I let it ring once. 3 times. And then I answered sweetly. "Hi, Dad." His voice was tight. "Linda, they're not letting Emma in. Security says she's not on the list." I tilted my head and blinked slowly. "Oh." I told them to only admit confirmed guests. Maybe there was a mistake somewhere. There was silence on the other end. Thick, furious silence. And then, "You did this." I let the words hang in the air. "Did what, Dad?" In the background, I could hear my mother panicking. And Emily screeching. Truly screeching. For a moment, I thought about all the birthdays Emily had taken over. All the time she stepped into a moment meant for me. And how I just swallowed it, smiled through it, and moved on. "Not today. I'm the bride," I said quietly. "And I shouldn't be dealing with this right now. Hope it works out." And I hung up. So many people, especially women, are raised to believe that grace means endurance, that being kind means being quiet, that the best response is always forgiveness, no matter how many times the boundary is crossed. But grace doesn't mean erasure. And kindness without self-respect becomes permission. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Let people experience the natural consequences of choices they were never held accountable for before. You don't have to play the villain. You just have to stop playing the fool. Outside, Emily was unraveling. Inside, the music had started. And as I stood at the chapel entrance, bouquet in hand, veil falling gently over my shoulders, I took a breath and smiled. This wasn't just a walk down the aisle. It was my first step out of her shadow. The ceremony was everything I'd hoped for. Simple, intimate. Every seat filled with someone who had seen me, not just watched me grow but truly seen me. As I walked down the aisle, I caught Alex's eyes. There was no grand gesture, just a quiet look that said, "We did it." But of course, the peace didn't last long. By the time we stepped into the reception hall, whispers were already circling the room like drifting petals. Some had seen the commotion outside. Others had heard about the incident from extended family. And some just knew something had happened even if they didn't know what. The air was electric, humming with curiosity. And then she appeared. Emily. Mascara streaked. Hair undone. No dress. No entrance. Just fury. She stormed across the room with a kind of reckless confidence only the golden child carries, even when the shine has worn off. "You," she hissed, standing right in front of me. I took a slow sip of my champagne and set the glass down carefully. "Oh, Emily," I said gently. "I wasn't sure you'd make it. You left me outside. You humiliated me. You shut me out of your wedding and made it look like I was the one ruining things." Her voice cracked as the guests fell silent. My mother tried to step in, her voice sharp and trembling. "Linda, apologize. This has gone too far." I looked at them, really looked. My father's clenched jaw, my mother's desperate eyes, and Emily vibrating with disbelief that, for once, she wasn't winning. And then I said, softly so only they could hear, "You did this to yourself." Emily's breath hitched. I continued, steady and calm. "Every time I stepped aside, you took a little more. And this time you tried to take everything. But not today. Not this time." She opened her mouth, rage spilling out, but before she could speak, Alex stepped forward. Just in time to catch the champagne flute she hurled at me. "Never touched me." Gasps echoed. Chairs scrape. A wave of murmurs broke across the room like a tide. "She's lost it." Was that the sister? She just threw a glass at the bride. My father finally stepped in, grabbing Emily by the arm. "Enough," he said. And for the first time in my life, he didn't look at her with admiration. He looked disappointed. Sometimes when people are used to getting away with everything, they believe they'll never be held accountable. Until one day someone stops letting them. Boundaries don't always look like walls. Sometimes they look like calm, polite resistance in a room full of people who expected you to fold. And when you stand your ground, even the ones who once ignored your voice start to listen. As my parents led Emily out of the reception hall, faces tight, the room still silent, I took a breath and looked around. Then slowly, the room began to clap. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Applause for the bride who didn't bend. And for the woman who had finally reclaimed her moment. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one last conversation. And it was waiting for me at the airport. We barely slept that night. Not because of stress, but because of joy. The kind of quiet, bone-deep joy that comes after surviving something no one else fully saw. Not the drama, but the years behind it. The subtle cutting down. The being overlooked. The learning to stay silent in rooms where you should have been celebrated. At 6:45 a.m., Alex and I sat at the gate, boarding passes in hand. My dress was packed, my heels tucked away, and my heart, finally light. And then my phone rang. Alex looked at the screen and gently shook his head. "Don't do it," he whispered. "Don't let them drag you back in." But something in me needed to hear it. Not for closure. Not for forgiveness. Just to know I was truly done. Answered. There was a beat of silence. You've really done it this time. Her voice was clipped, cold, but familiar. I said nothing. She continued. Your sister is devastated, Jessica. You embarrassed her. Humiliated her. How could you? Closed my eyes. Mom, if you're calling to blame me for Emily's choices, we don't need to keep talking. She scoffed. You could have just let her have it. One moment. Would it really have hurt you? And there it was. The story of my life. Would it really have hurt you? As if my comfort, my peace, my wedding was always negotiable, as long as it kept someone else happy. It reminded me of all the women I've met who were told, let your brother take the job. Let your cousin go first. Be the bigger person. And somehow they always were. Until one day, they weren't. That was me now. I don't care anymore, Mom, I said quietly. I don't care what you or Dad or Emily think of me. She inhaled sharply. Don't be ridiculous. We're your family. You don't walk away from family. Pause. And then said the words I never thought I could. Then maybe. You shouldn't have treated me like a stranger my whole life. There was silence. No apology. No understanding. Just stunned silence. And then gently I hung up. Sometimes the hardest chains to break are the ones that are invisible. The ones tied to guilt, to obligation, to childhood hopes of being enough. But when you finally cut them, you don't just lose something. You gain everything you never thought you were allowed to have. Alex slipped his arm around me. You okay? He asked. Smiled. And for the first time in years, meant it. Yeah, I said. I'm good. But what I didn't realize yet was this. He wasn't just the man I married. He was the beginning of a new family. One I got to choose. One I got to build. And that was the best kind of freedom. They say you don't get to choose your family. But that's only half the truth. Because one day, if you're lucky, if you're brave, you realize you can choose the people who feel like home. And leave behind the ones who only ever made you feel like a guest in your own story. That's what the honeymoon felt like. Not just a trip, but a quiet reset. Waking up without tension. Eating breakfast without tiptoeing around someone else's moods. Laughing, not nervously, not apologetically, just freely. Alex and I stayed in a small cabin tucked into the hills of Northern California. There was no Wi-Fi, no social media, no checking texts every few minutes. Just us, in peace. I remember one night, we built a fire and sat on the porch wrapped in the same blanket. He asked me if I missed them, my parents, Emily. And I thought about it. I thought about holidays where I was told to be grateful, while Emily opened the gifts I had asked for. About birthdays where she blew out my candles. About moments I had earned and never really got to live in. And I shook my head. I don't miss the people they made me become, I said. It reminded me of a friend I once had, Dana, who cut off contact with her older brother after years of emotional manipulation. People called her cold. But she told me once, I'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded by people who only love the version of me they can control. I didn't understand her back then. Now I do. Alex didn't just marry me. He gave me the space to finally marry my self-respect. The friends who showed up at the wedding. The people who stood and clapped after Emily left. The aunt who leaned in at the reception and whispered, I've been waiting years for you to do that. They were my new family. Not perfect, but present and real. Family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who shows up, who sees you, who protects your peace more than their own comfort. A year later, I would sit with our wedding album, flipping through pages that still made my heart swell. And I'd send one photo to an old friend with a message that simply said, this is what rising looks like. But before I close this story, there's one more thing I want to leave you with. One final, quiet moment that changed everything. It was a rainy afternoon, about a year later, when I finally opened the wedding album. Not just to look at the photos, but to remember the silence that came after. Not the silence of tension. Not the silence of waiting to be hurt, but the silence of peace, of nothing left to prove, of choosing stillness over struggle. The pages turned easily. Each photo a reminder that sometimes, your happiest day doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. There were no photos of Emily. No staged family portraits. Just real moments, laughter, joy, the kind that stays in your bones. I paused on one picture in particular. Me, standing alone at the top of the aisle, bouquet in hand, veil gently falling over one shoulder. A softness in my eyes I hadn't seen before. That wasn't the face of someone who won a fight. It was the face of someone who stopped fighting. I sent that photo to an old friend with a message that read, "This is what rising looks like." 'Cause it was. Not revenge. Not victory. But rising. Emily never reached out again. Neither did my parents. And for the first time, their absence didn't feel like a punishment. Felt like space. Space to breathe. To become. To live without walking on eggshells. We're taught to mourn the loss of relationships, even the ones that never made us feel safe. But sometimes the real grief is in how long we held on, trying to make something broken feel like home. Letting go isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a closed photo album, a gentle goodbye to the past, and a quiet promise to never lose yourself again trying to please people who only loved you on their terms. So if you've ever been the second choice in your own life, if you've ever stood quietly while someone else stole your moment, I hope Jessica's story reminds you that it's never too late to take your place back. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, what did this story make you feel? Was there a moment that reminded you of your own journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story moved you in any way, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Michael Stories for more real, raw, and powerful life stories. We'll see you in the next one.